The prophecy did not arrive as thunder. It came quietly, spoken without emotion. A ruler would fall not to rebellion, not to war, but to his own blood. The words carried no timeline, no condition, only certainty. He listened without interruption. Power had been taken once before through force. He understood how quickly dominance shifts when hesitation appears. The warning did not weaken him. It activated something colder than fear. Calculation. He did not question the source. Prophecy is not debated, it is managed. The idea that his own lineage would undo him did not provoke sorrow, it provoked strategy. If the threat would emerge from within, then within would be contained. Containment prevents growth. Growth enables challenge. He had seized power once by removing his predecessor. He would not allow repetition through negligence. The future would be addressed before it could take shape. He understood that fear begins where control ends. The prophecy introduced uncertainty, and uncertainty cannot be tolerated at the top of a hierarchy built on dominance. So he redefined the terms. If fate threatened through birth, then birth would become the point of intervention. Prevention is quieter than confrontation. Confrontation risks spectacle. He preferred silence. Silence leaves no battlefield, no rallying cry, no martyr. Only absence. The first child was placed in his arms under ritual light, witnessed by those who believed succession meant continuity. He studied the infant without visible emotion. No threat in the present, only potential. Potential becomes power if allowed to mature. He did not hesitate. There was no spectacle, no raised voice, only decision. Those present understood the message without explanation. The future would not be permitted to organize itself against him. Silence followed the act, heavier than accusation. No rebellion formed. Power at his level discouraged protest before it could gather breath. He returned to his throne without visible disturbance. If the prophecy required his bloodline to overthrow him, then his bloodline would remain contained. Containment was not cruelty in his mind, it was preservation. Preservation of order, preservation of supremacy, preservation of self. Another child was born. The prophecy did not specify one, it spoke in plural possibility. He refused to gamble on interpretation. Each birth became a calculation. Remove the variable before it matures. The pattern established itself quickly. Ceremony, silence, containment. Those closest to him felt the shift. Not rage, not madness, precision. Precision driven by the belief that prevention is more efficient than confrontation once power is threatened. With each birth, the palace grew quieter. Celebration turned procedural. Hope adjusted itself to caution. He watched the pattern unfold without outward strain. The prophecy had not weakened him. It had refined him. He no longer ruled only through strength. He ruled through anticipation. Anticipation prevents surprise. Surprise destabilizes authority. Authority must remain absolute. If blood could threaten it, blood would be controlled before it learned to stand. Whispers began not of rebellion but of absence. The palace had become a place where beginnings did not last. He heard the whispers and allowed them. Fear is useful when directed outward. No one challenged him openly. No army gathered. No rival appeared. The prophecy remained theoretical, and theory can be managed. He believed he had solved the equation. Remove each possibility. Leave nothing to mature. Leave nothing to return. The name was spoken only in private chambers, never in open court. Kronos. He had risen once by removing his own father, seizing authority before it could pass him by. That memory shaped everything. He knew how easily succession becomes overthrow. He had rewritten destiny once through force. He would rewrite it again through prevention. But prevention requires constant vigilance, and vigilance, sustained too long, begins to resemble fear. Each act strengthened his throne and weakened his rest. Kronos began to measure time differently, not by seasons, but by intervals between births. Relief lasted briefly, then dissolved into anticipation. The prophecy did not expire. It waited. He expanded surveillance, restricted movement within the palace, and trusted fewer voices. Control widened outward, yet doubt tightened inward. The more he contained the future, the more the future seemed to press back. He told himself the pattern was working. No uprising formed, no challenger emerged. The heavens remained aligned beneath his rule. Yet stability achieved through elimination is fragile. It must be maintained repeatedly. Each prevention demanded another. Kronos began to feel the weight of maintenance more than the weight of rule. Power secured through fear requires constant renewal, and renewal, when tied to blood, erodes something unseen. He understood that the prophecy had not specified when the threat would rise. It could wait years. It could wait decades. That uncertainty was intolerable, so he expanded his strategy beyond birth. He isolated allies, limited counsel, and reduced the circle of trust. Authority narrowed as control intensified. Kronos believed he was strengthening his position. In reality, he was reducing the number of voices that might warn him when the future finally moved. Rhea watched the pattern repeat without protest, but silence is not surrender. She observed how certainty had hardened into paranoia. Each child removed strengthened Kronos outwardly, yet hollowed the foundation beneath him. A throne built on anticipation of betrayal eventually creates it. She understood something he refused to admit. The prophecy did not require speed. It required survival. And survival sometimes hides where power least expects it. When the next child was born, Kronos prepared as before. Ceremony, containment, conclusion. The pattern had become automatic. That automation was his weakness. He no longer examined details. He assumed repetition guaranteed control. Rhea understood this. She introduced deviation where he expected sameness. In moments where systems rely on routine, a single substitution can alter trajectory. Kronos accepted what was presented. He did not verify. He consumed certainty, and certainty deceived him. What he accepted that day was not what he believed it to be. The ritual concluded without disruption. The palace exhaled in forced relief. Kronos returned to his throne, convinced the equation remained intact. But beyond his sight, absence had been replaced by concealment. Concealment matures quietly. The prophecy had not been erased. It had been delayed. Delay can be more dangerous than confrontation because it grows without drawing attention. Far from the palace, the child who should not have survived was hidden beyond immediate reach of Kronos' authority. There were no grand armies guarding him, no public declarations of rebellion, only secrecy. Secrecy allows growth without resistance. Kronos believed he had eliminated every variable. He had not accounted for substitution. Systems built on repetition often fail when repetition is interrupted once. He did not yet sense the fracture. Years passed without visible challenge. Kronos interpreted the silence as confirmation. The heavens remained ordered beneath his authority. No rival announced himself. No force gathered at the horizon. He allowed himself measured confidence. But confidence built on incomplete information is fragile. The child grew beyond the reach of routine. Strength developed without surveillance. Awareness formed without fear of immediate elimination. The future was learning to stand. The child did not grow in ignorance of the prophecy. He grew within it. Every story whispered around him carried the weight of inevitability. Kronos had tried to eliminate the future by force. Instead, he had defined it. The act meant to prevent succession had shaped it. Opposition gains clarity when confronted by fear. The child learned not only of power, but of the cost of preserving it through control. That knowledge would matter. Kronos began to sense disturbance before he could name it. Not rebellion, not movement. A shift in confidence among those closest to him. Whispers carried different tone. Eyes lingered longer than before. Authority that once felt immovable now required reinforcement through display. He tightened control again, unaware that tightening accelerates pressure beneath the surface. Pressure does not vanish when suppressed. It redistributes. And redistribution precedes rupture. The child who had been hidden no longer resembled vulnerability. Strength matured alongside awareness. He understood not only the prophecy, but the pattern that had defined Kronos' rule. Remove the threat before it forms. Eliminate possibility before it grows. The lesson was clear. Systems that rely on fear can be confronted through timing. Kronos had once overthrown his own father. The cycle had not ended. It had only reversed direction. Kronos did not recognize the reversal immediately. He still believed control flowed outward from his throne, but power does not remain static when succession matures in silence. The child began forming alliances beyond Kronos' surveillance, drawing strength from those who had grown weary of anticipation and absence. Authority maintained through elimination had weakened trust, and weakened trust creates openings where strategy can enter unnoticed. When the challenge finally emerged, it did not resemble chaos, it resembled inevitability. The child stood not as surprise but as consequence. Kronos saw in him the same resolve he once carried against his own father. That recognition was the sharpest fracture. Prevention had not erased the pattern. It had preserved it. What he had feared had matured precisely because he tried to control it. Fate had not defied him. It had waited. Kronos understood too late that fear had shaped every decision he made after the prophecy. Each act of prevention had reinforced the very cycle he sought to break. The child did not challenge him through rebellion alone, but through inevitability mirrored back at him. He had once risen by overthrowing a father who tried to contain destiny. Now he stood as that father. The symmetry was undeniable. Control had become repetition. Repetition had become fate. The confrontation did not begin with spectacle, but with recognition. Kronos saw in the challenger the same calculated resolve he once carried against his own father. There was no panic in the young figure's stance, only certainty. Certainty unnerved him more than force. Force can be countered. Certainty is harder to fracture. He realized then that prevention had not erased succession, it had refined it. The future stood before him, disciplined by his own methods. The clash that followed was not merely strength against strength, it was pattern against pattern. Kronos fought with the force that once secured his throne. The challenger fought with timing, learned from watching that force misused. Each movement carried history. Each strike echoed previous generations. Kronos understood, even while resisting, that his greatest mistake had not been the prophecy. It had been believing he could consume the future without shaping it. Kronos felt the structure of his rule weakening as the struggle intensified. Those who once obeyed without hesitation now observed without certainty. Authority that depends on fear fractures quickly when fear shifts direction. He had believed elimination would guarantee permanence. Instead, elimination had created a single, focused successor shaped by secrecy and patience. The future he tried to suppress had matured in silence, disciplined by absence rather than broken by it. The decisive moment did not arrive through overwhelming force, but through imbalance. Kronos misjudged timing, relying on dominance that once ensured victory. The challenger did not rush. He waited for overextension, for the slight hesitation born of accumulated doubt. When that hesitation surfaced even briefly, the structure shifted. Kronos understood then that inevitability cannot be consumed. It can only be delayed. And delay had finally expired. Kronos felt the throne shift before he fell. Power had always seemed immovable, reinforced by fear and repetition. Now repetition moved against him. Those who once stayed silent did not step forward. Silence had changed sides. The challenger advanced without fury, only conviction shaped by concealment. Kronos understood that control sustained through elimination collapses once elimination fails. His strategy had created the force that would replace him. The fall of Kronos was not thunderous, it was structural. Authority built on anticipation had exhausted itself. The challenger did not need spectacle. He needed recognition. Recognition came as those who once feared Kronos shifted allegiance without dramatic declaration. Power changes hands quietly, when inevitability fractures. Kronos had tried to devour the future to remain eternal. Instead, he accelerated succession. Prevention had completed the cycle he sought to erase. Kronos did not plead. Pleading contradicts the image of inevitability he had cultivated. He had once overthrown a father who tried to preserve power through suppression. Now he faced the mirrored consequence of that act. The challenger did not celebrate. Celebration would imply novelty. This was continuation. The cycle had not broken, it had completed itself. Kronos understood, in the final recognition of authority shifting, that fate does not resist control. It adapts around it. Power transferred not through ceremony, but through acknowledgement. Kronos was no longer the axis around which authority revolved. The challenger stood where inevitability once stood. Those who had endured silence adjusted quickly. Systems survived by adapting to new centers. Kronos realized that his greatest fear had not been overthrow, it had been irrelevance, and irrelevance arrives quietly when control fails to predict succession. He understood as authority withdrew from him that permanence had always been illusion. He had believed consumption guaranteed endurance. Instead, it guaranteed focus. Every act meant to erase a threat concentrated it. The challenger had grown shaped by absence, disciplined by secrecy, sharpened by prophecy. Kronos had tried to silence the future. He had amplified it. Control had not defeated destiny. It had trained it. The throne no longer responded to him. Power had shifted before he could reverse it. Those who once feared his vigilance now recalibrated their loyalty without resistance. Kronos realized that authority maintained through prevention cannot survive exposure. Once the illusion of inevitability fractures, obedience dissolves faster than force can restore it. He had ruled by containing possibility. Now possibility stood where he once stood. Kronos believed permanence could be engineered through elimination. That belief defined his reign more than strength ever did. When authority shifted, it did not collapse violently. It recalibrated. Those who once stood behind him stepped aside without spectacle. Fear had preserved obedience. Once fear fractured, obedience dissolved. Kronos understood that succession cannot be erased by force. It can only be delayed, and delay always returns with consequence. He had once taken power by overthrowing a father who feared succession. That memory had guided every decision afterward. Now the pattern stood complete. The son had become the father. The act meant to secure eternity had shortened it. Kronos recognized that cycles are not broken by suppression, they are reinforced by it. His attempt to control the future had preserved the exact structure that ensured his replacement. He saw, perhaps for the first time, that power built on fear must constantly defend itself against shadows it creates. The prophecy had not destroyed him, his reaction to it had. Each act of containment tightened the pattern he feared. The challenger had not appeared from chaos, he had emerged from design. Kronos had engineered the conditions for his own removal, and design, once set in motion, follows through to completion. As authority settled around a new center, Kronos felt the silence he once controlled move beyond him. Silence no longer obeyed, it observed. The structure he built had not vanished. It had transferred. Systems do not disappear when rulers fall. They adapt to new hands. Kronos understood then that his effort to stop destiny had ensured it would arrive sharpened, disciplined, and ready. The future had not defeated him. It had waited. He understood in that final awareness that destiny does not rush. It matures in shadow, especially when forced there. By attempting to devour the future, he had concentrated it into singular force. The challenger had not risen through chaos, but through patience. Patience erodes dominance more effectively than rebellion. Kronos had tried to outpace fate. Instead, he had trained it to move with precision, and precision reigns quietly. The heavens did not shatter when Kronos fell. There was no cosmic collapse, no immediate ruin. Order reassembled itself around a different center. That was the most unsettling truth. power had never belonged to one figure alone. It flowed towards stability. Kronos had mistaken possession for permanence. The prophecy had not demanded spectacle. It required sequence. Sequence had completed itself without mercy, but without chaos. Kronos had tried to consume succession to freeze time in his favor. But time does not halt for fear. It reorganizes around resistance. By eliminating each possibility, he had narrowed the future into a single focused outcome. Focus sharpens impact. The challenger did not arrive scattered. He arrived concentrated. Kronos had mistaken elimination for control. In reality, elimination had refined the very force destined to replace him. He understood too late that inevitability cannot be defeated by repetition. Each attempt to secure permanence through suppression only repeated the pattern he once exploited. The father who overthrew becomes the father overthrown. The cycle does not require cruelty. It requires continuity. Kronos had preserved continuity through fear. Fear preserved the structure preserved succession, and succession completed what prophecy began. Kronos had believed strength was the foundation of power. In truth, perception was. Once perception shifted, strength lost its anchor. Those who once feared him adjusted to new certainty without revolt. Authority depends on belief more than force. He had sustained belief through prevention. When prevention failed, belief dissolved. The prophecy did not destroy him. It exposed the limit of control. And limits, once visible, cannot be hidden again. He saw in the final transfer of power that permanence had always been illusion sustained by repetition. Remove repetition and illusion weakens. He had repeated elimination to maintain authority. That repetition had trained his successor in patience. Patience outlasts dominance. Dominance demands constant defense. Kronos understood that fear does not end destiny, it concentrates it. Concentrated destiny does not rush, it arrives prepared. The prophecy had never demanded brutality. It required inevitability. Kronos supplied the brutality himself. In trying to erase succession, he strengthened it. In trying to silence the future, he clarified it. Each act meant to protect permanence narrowed options until only one outcome remained. He did not fall because fate was stronger. He fell because he treated fate as enemy instead of sequence. And sequence completes itself when conditions align. In the end, Kronos was not remembered for the strength that raised him, but for the fear that guided him. Strength commands. Fear anticipates. Anticipation consumes attention until it becomes obsession. Obsession narrows judgment. Narrowed judgment miscalculates timing. Timing determines succession. He had once mastered timing to overthrow a father. Later, he misjudged it trying to preserve himself. That reversal defined his reign more than any victory. He realized that permanence cannot be secured by eliminating potential. Potential regenerates where space exists. By attempting to remove every possibility, he created a single, unavoidable outcome. That outcome matured beyond his control. Kronos had believed himself architect of destiny. Instead, he had been its catalyst. Control, when pushed too far, compresses the future into force, and compressed force releases with direction. Kronos had ruled by eliminating uncertainty. But uncertainty is not enemy to power. It is condition of balance. By trying to erase it completely, he destabilized his own structure. Every act of suppression tightened the pattern he once used to rise. He mistook control for mastery. Mastery requires adaptation. Control resists it. When resistance replaces adaptation, power becomes rigid, and rigidity fractures under pressure. He understood at last that cycles persist because they are denied, not because they are inevitable. By refusing to acknowledge succession, he accelerated it. By silencing potential, he refined it. Kronos had tried to secure eternity through force. Force can delay change, but it cannot dissolve it. Change gathers in silence until silence breaks. When it does, It does not roar, it replaces, and replacement is final. Kronos once believed that to rule was to remain untouched by consequence. He learned instead that consequence matures invisibly. Each decision shaped a future he refused to examine. By narrowing possibility, he intensified outcome. The prophecy had not forced his hand. It revealed his instinct, and instinct guided by fear constructs the very scenario it hopes to avoid. His reign ended not by surprise, but by accumulation. He had once stood as inevitability itself, unquestioned and absolute. In trying to preserve that image, he reduced his world to control and suspicion. The prophecy became lens through which every action passed. Over time, lens became distortion. Distortion narrows vision until only threat is visible. Kronos did not lose power because destiny was stronger. He lost it because fear redefined every choice he made. Kronos had believed that consuming succession would dissolve it. Instead, succession adapted. It withdrew, matured, and returned disciplined. His effort to dominate the future refined the future's focus. Elimination did not end the threat. It clarified it. By narrowing possibility to a single survivor, he strengthened inevitability. What he feared most did not arise from chaos. It arose from the precision his own control had created. He understood in retrospect that fear disguised itself as prudence. Every act had seemed rational at the time. Eliminate the threat, preserve the throne, maintain order. But order maintained through suppression erodes trust. Eroded trust isolates power. Isolated power loses awareness. Kronos had narrowed his circle to prevent betrayal. In doing so, he ensured that warning would never reach him before consequence did. He saw that the prophecy had not dictated his downfall, it revealed his weakness. A ruler secure in authority could have absorbed uncertainty. Kronos attempted to erase it. Erasure intensified it. Each prevention tightened the cycle he once exploited. The father who rises through overthrow invites the same method in return. His mistake was not ambition. It was believing ambition could be neutralized once it existed. Ambition learns. Kronos believed that if no successor remained, succession would end. He failed to see that succession is not dependent on quantity, but inevitability. Remove many, and the remaining grows sharper. His attempt to fragment the future concentrated it. Concentration produces force. When that force matured, it did not scatter. It moved with direction. Kronos had tried to prevent repetition. Instead, he perfected it. He once interpreted prophecy as threat to be neutralized. He never considered it might be warning to be understood. Understanding requires restraint. Restraint requires confidence. Kronos replaced both with control. Control tightened until no flexibility remained. Without flexibility, power cannot adapt. When adaptation ceases, succession accelerates. He had not been defeated by a stronger force. He had been outlasted by a patient one. In the end, Kronos understood that permanence cannot be secured through consumption. What is consumed leaves imprint. What is suppressed leaves pressure. Pressure accumulates beneath silence until it reorganizes into force. He had mistaken silence for safety. Silence had been preparation. The prophecy did not overpower him. His reaction to it shaped the conditions that allowed it to mature unchecked. Fate had not rushed. It had waited. He recognized too late that destiny is not an opponent to be crushed, but a sequence to be navigated. By treating it as enemy, he hardened every decision into defense. Defense isolates. Isolation narrows counsel. Narrowed counsel blinds authority. Kronos had fortified his throne until no warning could enter. When consequence arrived, it did not break walls. It replaced the center, and replacement requires no spectacle, only inevitability. He once believed that devouring succession would dissolve the threat. Instead, succession adapted in silence. Each act meant to erase potential clarified it. What remained was not scattered rebellion, but concentrated inevitability. Kronos had compressed the future into singular force. When it returned, it carried precision shaped by absence. He did not fall to chaos. He fell to consequence refined by his own control. Kronos understood in the quiet after his reign that power secured through fear cannot rest. It must anticipate endlessly. Anticipation becomes obsession. Obsession narrows judgment. Narrowed judgment misreads sequence. He had tried to outrun succession by eliminating it. Instead, he shortened the path it needed to travel. The prophecy did not create his downfall. It revealed the instinct that ensured it. He once believed that by consuming succession, he could freeze time in his favor. But time does not pause for fear. It reorganizes around resistance. By narrowing possibility, he intensified outcome. The future did not vanish. It consolidated. Consolidated force does not scatter, it advances. Kronos had mistaken elimination for mastery. Mastery requires adaptation. He chose control instead. Control hardened. Hardened power fractures. Kronos had ruled as if inevitability belonged to him alone. He had mistaken possession of power for ownership of time. But time is not owned. It passes through rulers, reshaping them or replacing them. His attempt to dominate succession revealed the boundary he refused to see. Boundaries ignored become pressure points. When pressed, they redefine authority. Kronos did not lose because fate was stronger. He lost because he refused to adapt to it. He saw in the final understanding of his reign that fear disguises itself as wisdom when repeated often enough. Each act had felt justified. Each decision had seemed necessary. But necessity defined by anxiety distorts judgment. Kronos believed he was preserving order. He was accelerating consequence. Order maintained through suppression cannot remain stable. It narrows until only one outcome remains. That outcome had waited patiently for its moment. Kronos understood that cycles persist not because they are unbreakable, but because they are repeated. He had repeated the pattern that elevated him, believing repetition would secure permanence. Instead, repetition preserved vulnerability. The father who rises through overthrow trains the son in overthrow. What he once used as strategy became inheritance. Inheritance matures beyond intention, and matured intention returns with precision. He realized that the prophecy had not commanded his actions. It revealed his fear. Fear shaped policy. Policy shaped isolation. Isolation shaped blindness. Kronos believed vigilance ensured survival. In truth, vigilance without trust erodes perspective. When perspective narrows, threat appears everywhere. Acting against imagined threat often creates real one. The child he feared most had grown not in chaos, but in clarity sharpened by his excess control. Kronos once believed that eliminating possibility would secure eternity. He failed to see that eternity cannot be engineered. By compressing succession into secrecy, he intensified its focus. What he removed did not disappear. It reassembled beyond his sight. When it returned, it carried direction forged by patience. He had mistaken dominance for permanence. Permanence demands flexibility. Without it, power becomes brittle. Brittle power breaks. He understood in the final clarity of reflection that destiny does not require spectacle. It requires alignment. Each decision he made after hearing the prophecy aligned the future more precisely against him. Suppression narrowed variables. Narrowed variables concentrated force. Concentrated force matured in silence. When it finally confronted him, it did so with structure. Kronos had engineered the architecture of his own removal. Kronos had tried to dominate succession as if it were enemy territory. He fortified, restricted, eliminated. But succession is not terrain to be conquered. It is transition to be managed. By refusing transition, he intensified it. The prophecy did not rush him toward collapse. It exposed his inability to share permanence. Permanence hoarded becomes fragile. Fragility hidden becomes fracture. and fracture invites replacement. He saw that power cannot consume the future without shaping it. Every act of suppression carved the outline of what would replace him. The more he resisted succession, the more defined succession became. Definition gives direction. Direction gives strength. Kronos had feared dissolution. Instead, he created consolidation. The future he tried to erase returned concentrated, disciplined, and inevitable. Control had not defeated fate. It had clarified it. Kronos understood in the silence beyond authority that fear does not erase destiny. It sharpens it. Each attempt to prevent succession had refined succession's focus. He had mistaken control for immunity. Immunity requires adaptation. Adaptation requires humility. He chose dominance instead. Dominance without flexibility fractures under its own rigidity. The prophecy did not need force to succeed. It needed repetition, and he provided it. In the end, Kronos was not destroyed by destiny, but completed by it. He had tried to consume the future to remain eternal. Instead, he concentrated it into inevitability. The prophecy did not overpower him. It revealed him. A ruler who feared succession ensured succession would arrive disciplined and prepared. Power cannot devour time without being reshaped by it. And time, once aligned, always replaces what refuses to yield.